Question. Hi Kim, could you explain the meaning of Jesus writing on the ground? There's a quote here. They were trying to trap him into saying something they could use against him, but Jesus stooped down and wrote in the dust with his finger. What and why did Jesus write on the ground? Or is this rather a mystical reference, symbolic of something else and not a literal event? Well, the situation was there was a woman caught in adultery. And there was an angry mob wanting to stone her. And Jesus comes upon the situation, and instead of really saying anything, he bends down and starts writing on the ground. And there are some biblical scholars that say that this was a woman who was considered to be a prostitute. And the mob was angry with her, wanting to stone her, but Jesus bent down and he started writing the names of all of the people who had slept with her. And when they saw their own names, they couldn't get themselves to kill her because they realized that they themselves had also sinned, or whatever you call it. So this is one outer way to interpret it, but as the questioner says, you could say there is a mystical reference or symbolic meaning of it. And really, everything that Jesus did or said can be understood at different levels. There's a symbolic meaning behind everything. And what I would say here is that whenever we are condemning others, if we are willing to look at ourselves, our own psychology, our own subconscious minds, which could be a symbol for the ground, what's hidden under the ground, we will see that since we are not perfect, do we really need to condemn anyone else? And you could take this in various directions. I mean, you could say that you see so many people who are very quick to condemn other people, but they haven't seen that they themselves are maybe doing the same thing, or they have the same kind of attitude or beliefs. And this is what psychologists call cognitive dissonance. And you see this in so many situations in the world where people are so quick to point the finger at other people, where they think that if they can just change other people or get rid of other people, their situation will change, because they are not acknowledging that the only way our situation is going to change is if we change ourselves, our own psychology, our own minds. But you can also look at it that what you see in the world, you see an awful lot of this condemnation. I mean, now with the internet and social media, you see how some people get approach these very angry, condemning comments that seem very, very harsh, very, very judgmental. And there is a concept that the Ascended Masters have talked about for a long time, or something called a spiritual poison. And it actually goes back to Buddhism, where they have this concept called the Dhyani Buddhas. Dhyani Buddhas. And in Buddhism, they are generally considered meditation Buddhas, that you meditate upon rather than being real Buddhas. But the Ascended Masters actually talk about them as ascended beings. And they represent various things to people. They have a positive quality. But the positive quality that they have counteracts what's called a spiritual poison. And so there are various of these spiritual poisons, but there is certainly, you could say this, condemnation, judgment, anger towards others. This is a spiritual poison. And you could also say that it's a type of fear-based energy. And as I've explained in several of my videos, the lack in our upbringing is the awareness that beyond the purely physical realm, there are three other levels of higher energies that make up the world we live in, the material world we live in. And it's the emotional, the mental, and the identity level. There are simply higher levels of vibration beyond the physical just as ultraviolet light is beyond what we can see with our physical eyes. So, as I've explained in several videos, including How the World Was Created and others in that playlist, we have a collective consciousness. Humankind has collectively created this energy field around the planet, and in this energy field are many different lower energies that have specific vibrations. Like anger has a specific vibration compared to, for example, this judgmentalness. And there are, of course, many others. Whatever we can call negative feelings, there are huge accumulations in the collective consciousness or the collective energy field based on this energy. Because, of course, you see, even if you read the Bible, you can see, going back to the Old Testament, how people have been condemning each other. Going back to Cain and Abel and so many other situations. So what we can say is that this tendency to condemn others is a spiritual poison. It's a fear-based form of energy. And what has happened to a lot of people in the world is that they have opened their individual energy fields to it. And what happens in many situations is that a person sees another person doing something. And they are conditioned to believe that this is absolutely wrong. And now the person opens his or her energy field to this collective energy, and it rushes in and overwhelms the person so that they are willing to do something they normally wouldn't do. And this is what happened to this angry mob that Jesus was facing. I mean, individually, they wouldn't have stoned the woman. But because they formed this mob mind, now they were willing to do it. And you see, of course, numerous examples of this in history. And you can also see how this has led to amazing atrocities. I mean, the Holocaust, what was it? Other than a certain number of German people, they opened their minds, their individual energy fields, to this collective condemnation energy. And now their minds were overwhelmed by this judgmentalness and this need to punish the Jews and do something about this belief that that would solve their problems. And, you know, all kinds of situations like that throughout history. So it's really a very insidious energy, and you can, for example, see that social media, you can see there are some people that post these comments on social media or even on YouTube videos where they're very judgmental, very condemnatory, putting other people down. And if you are a little bit sensitive to energy, you can actually read the vibration. And you know, one thing you can do with this, if you are sensitive to the energy, you can realize that it's not personal towards you. If you're exposed to this on social media, I know that most people, they react to this, but you can really step back and say, but wait a minute, this person has opened his or her mind to this collective energy field of judgment, this spiritual poison. And the person's mind is just taken over by this. And I just happen to somehow trigger this. And now the person is directing that energy from the collective through their individual minds against me. But it really isn't against me. It isn't personal. And if I realize that, I can avoid taking it personally. Because if I do take it personally, what do? Well, I open my individual field to that energy as well. So I take it in, and now I feel condemned, or I feel guilty, or I feel compelled to defend myself by accusing the other person back and say, well, you shouldn't be accusing me, you're not perfect either. And so you could look at the symbolic meaning of Jesus doing this was that in a metaphorical sense, he was holding up a mirror to these people. And this is part of what is meant with the whole idea of turning the other cheek. Because if people are aggressive towards you, the common reaction is you react to it, you feel guilty. Or So you either condemn yourself and submit to their anger and condemnation, or you try to defend yourself, or you try to accuse them back and say, well, you're not perfect, so you. But Jesus didn't do any of this. He didn't reason with him, he didn't argue with him, he didn't engage with him. He just bent down and wrote their names on the ground. And this is what we do when we are accused of something, when we are exposed to this aggressive energy, whatever aggressive energy it is. When we don't respond in kind, but respond by being kind, we are holding up a mirror, we are turning the other cheek. And first of all, it can have the effect that it can reflect people's energy back to them. Like in this case with Jesus. They actually snapped out of this mob mentality. Their minds were overwhelmed by this negative judgmental energy, but they snapped out of it and they just walked away. So this can happen. But it can also happen that people don't do that, they become even more condemnatory. But in that case, we can bring, what I've talked about in other videos, we can bring the judgment of Christ. And this means now that because the person is attacking us and we are not responding in kind, the person gets a more severe karmic return from it. And this either can again cause them to snap out of it, or it can eventually cause them to lose the opportunity to be an embodiment on earth. So it's actually very profound what Jesus demonstrated with this example. Because you could also say that I have my whole playlist about avatar psychology, and in my video about how the world is created, I explained what avatars is, that we came to Earth to help raise the planet. And the way we do this is not by making other people seem wrong or making them see what they can't see. In the highest way we can do it, I'm not saying we can't reason with people, but the highest way we can do it is to embody the Christ mind and be an open door for the Christ mind to mirror people's actions and words back to them, and thereby either help them change because they get a different frame of reference, or bring upon the judgment of Christ upon them. See, why do people get a different frame of reference? Because you don't react the way they think, the way they expect. So people accuse you. You can see it on social media. Somebody accuses you of something. What is it they really want? Well, they want to argue with you. They want to quarrel with you. They want you to defend yourself or accuse them back. Why? Well, for the person, they're just trapped. They are overwhelmed by this energy. They want to argue with people. They think it gives them something. But really, behind this is what I've called this, the energy in the collective consciousness, which acquires over time some rudimentary consciousness where it forms these entities or even demons that have an aggressive intent of stealing energy from people. So here's a collective entity in the collective consciousness. It's based on people judging each other. It can only steal energy when people are engaging in this judgmentalness. So here's a person who comes across your YouTube video, for example, and you say something he doesn't like, so he gets triggered. Now he goes into this judgmental energy. He opens his energy field to this collective entity, and through him, the collective entity is directing this very powerful condemnatory energy at you. And the entity wants you to respond by either defending yourself or accusing the other person, because then it can steal energy from both of you. It's already taking some energy from the guy who's accusing you, but it wants to take something for you as well. But if you don't react, if you turn the other cheek, then the entity can't take any energy from you. It might still take some from the other person, but it's not going to take anything from you. See, what you see in many parts of the world, for example, look at Israel and the Palestinians and the Arabs and the Iranians right now. Look at what's been happening in the Middle East for thousands of years. Way back when, somebody did something to somebody else. The somebody else felt they had to take revenge, so they did something to the somebody. But now the somebody got angry because somebody else did something to them, So now they have to take revenge on somebody else. And this has just kept going back and forth. And nobody knows where it started. And nobody knows where it's ending, because it's never ending. Because these entities in the collective are just sucking up people's energy, and they can never have enough. And this is actually, if you really want to take another step up, this is actually why Jesus embodied in the Middle East. It is not, as so many Christians believe, because it was the Holy Land, because it has some spiritual significance. No, he embodied there because it was one of the lowest places on earth in terms of the collective consciousness, precisely because these people have been accusing each other and fighting each other and going back and forth over and over. So the idea was that if the Christ could demonstrate that it can transform people in that region, then there was hope for the rest of the world as well. And the other was, of course, that by embodying in that region, letting them attack him and kill him, he brought forth the judgment of Christ on some of the very lowest people embodying on earth. So it's really, it's just a matter of seeing this and seeing that there are these entities, demons, the fallen beings that want people to engage in these pointless arguments, non-consequential arguments, because they steal their energy. And Jesus demonstrated 2,000 years ago the only way to free ourselves from these spirals. Turn your other cheek, don't react. Do unto others, forgive your enemies, love those that hate you, because you are not thereby you are not perpetuating the spiral and putting yourself in the spiral. You're staying out of the spiral, and you are at least stopping it as far as you're concerned. And that's how we as spiritual people can help raise the consciousness on earth, by embodying that, by demonstrating that, which is also what the Buddha demonstrated by being non-attached to the demons of Mara. Or as Jesus said, the prince of this world cometh and has nothing in me. Which means the forces of this world, including other people, they don't have anything in you whereby they can pull you into these reactionary spirals where you give the energy, you give your energy to the dark forces. You are, so to speak, casting your pearls before swine, or giving it out as holy to the dogs so they will turn and rend you. And so this could be another deeper layer of symbolic meaning. I'm not saying there isn't more that could be said about it, but nothing is coming to me right now.